Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Grow Wealthy Grooming. I'm your host, Riverly, founder of the Savvy Groomer. I teach you guys to go from being burnt out, broken, to healthy, wealthy, and happy, building a grooming business on your terms. Let's go ahead and get involved in today's topic. I'm going to give you 7 tips to fire your grooming client without getting a bad review, or at least doing our very best. So let's start with some of these tips, and we're going to also give some real life examples from both my business and client businesses, other students, right? So number one, first tip is going to be to affirm that pet. I know these conversations can be very uncomfortable, but having the "it's not you, it's me" conversation is a great way to start it off, right? Make sure they know it's not about them, it's about you, right? And it's not about their pet. So, here's an example. Your grooming client is used to be having their pet groomed one-on-one or straight through / express, right? Something that you've maybe stopped offering. So, one thing you can say is, it's been really amazing taking care of Fluffy for the past 2 years. As you know, we've grown exponentially in the past 2 years, and I want to thank you for being part of that growth. I've noticed that you're used to having us groom Fluffy straight through, and it's just not a service we're going to be offering in the future. I have a list of other names of groomers that I can give you that may suit you better. We are no longer going to be able to groom Fluffy start to finish or an express groom. So you can see here, again, we're affirming the pet. We're saying thank you so much for being a client. Thank you so much for being a part of our growth, right? Because sometimes we start a business off and we have all these great lofty ideas, or we're trying things out and long term, they just don't work, right? And that's what happens. And that's okay. So affirm the pet, let them know that it's not their fault. Things have just changed, right? Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Don't ghost your clients, please. Okay? You cannot expect to be treated like a professional and then act very unprofessional. If the client is not being rude or unreasonable, just let them know that things have either changed or you're not going to be able to service them again, right? So let's say you have a former or current grooming client who's wanting to stay with their pet while they're being groomed. Okay. So again, use a similar format to the previous script and then add something along the lines of, anyone who is not an employee cannot be allowed in our grooming area. In order for your pet to build trust with us, we cannot allow you to stay, or you're welcome to stay under certain terms and conditions, and then tell them those terms and conditions. But we're unable to accommodate whatever their request is, okay? You can also offer alternatives such as video of their pet. Sometimes owners just want to feel comfortable, right? So you can always send them like a little video. I often did this when I was grooming a cat and they'd be really worried about the cat in the tub. And I would just send them a quick video of the cat being perfectly fine in the tub, right? So consider doing that. And then also gently remind them that they must start having trust in you. If you're going to have a long-term fruitful relationship with them, you have to be on the same page, and they have to acknowledge that you're both here to take care of your pet, right? Take care of their pet. You're both here in the best interest of that pet. So don't just ghost them. Now, again, if that client is being irate and rude, do not engage. That is the only time I will say that that is an exception. Let's move on to number 3. Don't break up with a client over text. Now, you wouldn't want someone to break up with you after 3 dates via text, right? So don't break up with a client that you've had for years, over text. Now, one important key point of this is they can't hear the tone of voice in a text, and that can make things a lot worse, okay? If you must do it through a written format, I highly suggest that you do it via email or send a good old-fashioned letter. That said, I don't think that that is, again, the nicest, most appropriate way. Unless if this is a consultation, then that is a little bit different. But we're talking about a long-standing client or a client you've had for a while. So I want to remind you that all text messages and all written conversations can easily be screenshot and uploaded onto things like TikTok, Facebook, and all of your social media platforms, right? Clients can easily use this as a weapon. So that's why I highly suggest, again, having a phone conversation or in person, they can hear your voice, they can hear what you're talking about, right? This is a situation where you can actually communicate with them as an equal person. Now, if you are worried about having what they said, without having text to back it up, right? Not having receipts, right? Well, then you can use a program like Dialpad where you can call them. It actually keeps a transcript of your conversation, and that transcript can be real time, which is incredibly useful if you're hiring a virtual assistant or another person to do your phone calls. Because then if the client goes, oh, your employee said this, you can actually go back and look and see if that was the case. I find that incredibly useful. Awesome. Let's move on to number 4. Create healthy boundaries and set realistic expectations. Most of the times, clients can be trained to be great clients. Stand your ground and be clear with kindness. So let's consider a grooming client's late at drop off, right? So something along the lines of, hey, Susie Q, I love grooming Fluffy. He's a great dog. Remember, affirm the client. I really need you to hold your appointment time. When you're late, it pushes everything back. I want to make sure that I give Fluffy all the time, care, and attention that he deserves. When you're late and running behind, that means that he goes without. And I don't really think that's fair to him. Sorry, my cat. You can hear him, huh? And that means he has to go without. And I don't think it's really fair for him. Honestly, it doesn't make me feel all that great because I want to make sure that you get the best service. What can we do to solve this? Sometimes handing them the problem allows them to set their own boundaries. If you guys have human children, you know that sometimes we'll say, hey, you did this. What do you think a fair punishment would be? Now, if they're not going to give you that answer, remember to be the guide, not the hero and not the villain. So options could be, depending upon your business, things like I need more flexible pickup and drop off times. Something about like deciding for what policies and procedures that you're actually going to implement. Saying something along the lines of, that's fine. And I just want you to understand that this cuts into the time that I can do this service. So this may mean that I'm not going to, cut his nails or clean his ears because I need to make sure that his haircut is done. And a bath dog, that may mean he goes home wet. Now, this is again a personal business decision. Do you want to have somebody who comes late and forces you to do a half-done job? So if you don't want to do that, you can say something along the lines of, I'm really sorry to hear that. My grooming service standards are really high, and I think that's why you picked me. If that's not important to you, then maybe I can give you the names and numbers of other local groomers who may be a better fit for you. Okay. And that really brings us into number 5. And this is really key, guys. Be firm, but don't be a doormat. Okay. You can always yell back and push back in this instance, right? You can get pissed off that this person was late, but that's not really going to help you, right? I like to think about being a little classy. And again, I go between classy and sassy. I'm always kind of going back and forth. But it really doesn't ever do you any good to be nasty, okay? Especially in this day and age of social media and online reviews. So an irate grooming client is never going to be satisfied. If someone is flipping out and throwing a temper tantrum, instead I want you to imagine that they are a 2-year-old child. Don't imagine they're an adult, imagine they're a little kid, okay? Something along the lines of, I'm very sorry we are unable to accommodate your needs. We love Fluffy. He's an absolutely wonderful dog. We are very sorry that we can't meet your needs. If you'd like referrals, we're happy to give you referrals. However, at this time, we feel that we can't meet your expectations and we feel it's best if you find another groomer who can. Now, this is only if you have referrals to give out. I'm actually not a big fan of referrals. I like to tell them I have a list of other groomers I'm aware of in the area. And the reason why is, especially in this day and age, people can change, right? We can have a grooming salon that 2 years ago was top notch, amazing, had great employees. And then 2 years later, it's either been sold or their priorities have changed. I'm really not in the business of keeping track of who's doing what. I have to focus on me and my business. So that's where referrals can get a little sticky. Now, if you do have a really tight knit community and you know the local groomers really well, that's when you would give out those referrals. Let's move on to number 6. Treat people with dignity and respect, even when they don't deserve it. I know this can get really hard, right? But remember, the more personal we take things, the harder our job becomes. You don't know what's going on in their personal life, okay? And you may have a grooming client who becomes derogatory, condescending to you, right? And one option is just to say something along the lines of, ma'am or sir, that's not very nice, right? Sometimes I've had clients where I flat out asked them, I said, this isn't really you. What's going on? Or this isn't really like you. I'm going to pretend like this never happened and let's talk next time. Right? Because we don't know if their grandfather just died or they had some other major incident in their life. And I'm not here to excuse bad behavior, but there's a big difference between someone who is always irate and always rude and somebody who's off. And especially if it's our first time getting to know someone, we wouldn't know. However, if this is a longstanding client and they've always been this way, that's when it's time to let them go. So a great example of this actually happened to me. I had a client accusing me of quicking their dog's nails. They became very irate and they asked for me to steam clean all of the carpets in their house. Now, here are 2 great ways we can deal with this, right? We can say, we're sorry to hear this happened. We do everything in our power, but sometimes mistakes happen. We don't know why the nails were quicked or when it happened. As you can see from the video, and I always had my grooming salon had videos that way. God forbid, if someone left, I knew what was going on, okay? But, in the video, you could see the dog left and there was no puddles of blood. Unfortunately, when pets leave our care, we can't tell you how things occur. I'm more than happy to do something for you, but I am not paying for your entire house shampooed and steamed. Again, be firm, be nice, and be dignified in that moment, because that lady was flipping out on me. She was acting like we had murdered her dog. And I understand, because some people don't realize how, this dog probably just sat there and scratched on, the concrete or something. I don't know what happened. But I'm certainly not going to pay a $300 professional carpet cleaning, right? That's just not reasonable. Now, let's say she continued to be irate. I would say something along the lines of, we love Fluffy. He's a great boy. We love clipping his nails for you. Clipping dogs' nails, there are occasionally rare mistakes. He's potentially going to have an instance where he could potentially get quicked, right? I mean, that's the truth. Like, even if you are so good at it, sometimes dogs have very long quicks. In this instance, it was a Chihuahua who had extraordinarily long quicks. And, it is what it is. So we told her, if you feel it's a situation where he's going home to a house that this incident can never happen again, we don't feel comfortable putting you or ourselves in that position, that you're not going to be satisfied. We think it's best for you to go to your vet, where your vet will be able to insert whatever they're saying and make sure his nails are done to your satisfaction. We're not in a position of having him stay to make sure he's not going to scratch his nails open. Now, in this instance, this client wanted me to keep the dog all day, like for 8 to 10 hours, to make sure it couldn't happen. And we just couldn't promise her that. We did just dremeling, and when that dog went home, I don't know what he was doing, but he would quick his nails. And they didn't want to take any ownership of the situation. So there's only so much you can do in that instance. So do the best you can, but sometimes you just kind of have to hold it in, be respectful, even if they don't deserve it, and decide to just kind of move on. Okay, so let's move on to our 7th and final tip. My 7th tip is ask yourself, am I the asshole? Now, this is occasionally true. And let's just be honest. Sometimes the thing that a customer leaves could honestly easily be fixed. It could be your ego. It can be sometimes you're just asking clients to do something that they simply cannot do, or you're not their right groomer, right? That it could be that they're not your soulmate client and you're not compatible with their lifestyle or their goals or whatever it is, right? So here's a great perspective. So I have a standard poodle. Her name is Rory. She's lovely. And I sadly had to fire my groomer. So what happened was I wanted very specific things done when grooming my standard poodle. I wanted clean feet, clean face. And I also wanted her ears plucked. Her ears grew very, very fast and she would get ear infections. I wanted her ears 10 bladed, kind of like in a modified German. I wanted very specific things. But I also realized that certain things were not getting done. And so I asked the groomer, I said, I need to know what's included in my groom because I want these services. I wanted her ears plucked. I wanted her nails dremeled. Could I dremel them? Absolutely. But it's a lot easier for them to have to dremel it when they're doing clean feet. I don't really want to take my dog home and dremel them after paying for it. The groomer acted like I was being unreasonable. They acted like I was intentionally being rude to them. And at no point did the grooming business owner say, hey, do I have anything on my website or on my counter? Do I just like rattle off verbally all the things that this person is expected to remember that's included? But instead of just saying, hey, this is included, this is more money, this is less money. And as a pet owner, I didn't really love having to ask that question and then be a little argued with and being treated it didn't feel good. I'm like, I don't know what's included. I just want these things. And I didn't like that I had to be very specific every time I went in to make sure I got done what I wanted done. It was crazy to me. I'm like, listen, I have money. Please do this. Please don't make me have to remind you each time. But if I didn't remind them, it didn't get done. And that was very frustrating to me. And another thing was that I lived 45 minutes away. So I would ask them to give me an hour's warning. The groom could take anywhere between 2 to 4 hours, and occasionally it was even longer. How they got a standard poodle done in 2 hours, I will never know. But I didn't care as long as I had an hour's warning because I'd be either home or I would be shopping. But I couldn't drop what I was doing and rush back to the groomers. And it was every single time they would give me like a 15-minute warning. And then if I didn't get there in 15 minutes, they started charging me more. And it was making me crazy because I'm like, can you please either give me a set time? Because I will be back at that set time. Will you please give me an hour warning? Because I promise I can be there within that hour. Or could I just have more of a warning? They weren't in an area where I could just be 15 minutes away. It wasn't really an option. Everything around there was 20 to 30 minutes. Now, they were used to having all of their clients living in that neighborhood, but I didn't. I came out of that neighborhood to spend my money there. So I want you to ask yourself, are you asking that client to do something that they just can't do? And are you being the asshole about it? And that's not always the case, right? Sometimes it's just something different. And there you have it, guys. 7 ways that you can fire a grooming client while hopefully avoiding a bad review. I hope you really enjoyed this. I had a blast teaching you guys. I love sharing these videos. And if you like it, please give it a thumbs up, a like, a share, whatever it is. All right, guys, as always, happy grooming.